Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Thomas at Crescent Kernow here in Redruth in Cornwall. Another session of David's dazzling documents. One of the things we try to do in this little series is to point out different types of records and the uses and the information that can be contained in them. Today we're going to look at manorial records, and one of the definitions of a manor is a right to hold a manorial court, or a court baron as it's sometimes called. On the desk here today is the manor court book of the Manor of Tehiddy, which of course will be familiar to many people here in the Camborne Redruth area. And this book runs from 1756 until 1794. Let's have a look at it and see what information we can find out about the past. For example, we can find out that the courts were held here, and this is 1756, and it says, in the house of Simon Hockin in Camborne Churchtown. Now actually that isn't a private house, that's a public house, which is the proper definition of the word public house, in a public place of drinking. And the manor court met, and here we've got the names of some of the individuals, John Vivian, John Rogers, for example, and we've got other people mentioned. And also the manor was concerned about enclosures and encroachments on manorial property. And it says here near the bottom, we present some enclosures made near Tolskithy, which seem to be encroachments on and taken out of the waste of this manor. So people had been brought before the notice of the manorial court for infringement of manorial rights. Let's move on. And one of the things that also concerned the manorial courts was you have examples of mites of wreck and things that pop up from the time to time on that, and you can see different sections here on that refer to different objects that are washed up at sea. And also one of the things that come before the courts were some curious feudal customs, and one of the things in the Tehiddy Manor was called deodand, which in effect means something given to God. What it was anything or something that caused the death of anyone on manorial property was forfeit to the lord of the manor, and it was abolished by the Deodand's Act in the 19th century. But how does it pair out locally? And it says, we find and present, this is 1772, that on the 3rd day of May last, John Richards, a lad, was unfortunately killed in the public high road between Camborne Poorhouse and Berepper in the said parish of Camborne, and within this manor, by a grey horse, the property of Alice Glanville, of the said parish widow. And so the same was found by the coroner's inquisition, whereby the said horse became forfeited as a deodand to the aforesaid lord of this manor, and as such was thereupon immediately demanded by the aforesaid George Veal, steward of the manor, and the same was accordingly delivered to him by the coroner for the said lord of the manor. Quite far-reaching manorial courts' rights and the privileges of the lord of the manor. Let's look a little further. And we have also, talking about wrecks earlier on. It says here, this is a little later in 1775. We also find and present that sometime in the month of April was found at Dead Man's Cove at the west of Keveras Gate under Ruscagic Downs within the said manor by Richard Phillips, Thomas Carthew, Francis Hocking and others, all of Camborne, about 100 gallons of brandy, and one half thereof delivered to Joseph Whitaker, one of the Lord's servants, for the use of the Lord of the said manor. That's nice, but it poses several questions. What was this brandy doing there? Was it right at wreck, or was it being smuggled? And most importantly, where did the other half of this brandy go? Well, there's a little story in here in that the manorial rights of Tehiddy extended from the stream at Porthtowan right down to the Cadreevy Island, or what we would call Cadreevy Lighthouse today. But the rights of the 100 of Penwith, which were owned by the Arundel family of Lanherne up at Morecambe in Pider, extended from the same stream at Porthtowan right around to Perranuthnell, right around the Land's End area. So the two of them, one half had one half of the brandy and one the other. Curious customs, manners, and hundreds of Cornwall. And looking on, we find about here we present Henry Eustace, a tenant on Higher Trelawney, the lands of George Hunt, for erecting a turf rick on the high road called Pool Lane, part of the waste of the manor and adjoining the said tenement. Bad boy, he shouldn't have done it. He was encroaching again on manorial property and manorial rights. And then just picking out and going on a little further, we have a further encroachments mentioned here. And here we find and present that this day John Hocking of a Luggan Tinner paid Thomas Kevill, the Lord, 1 shilling for his trespass in digging, taking and clay and earth out from the waste leading from a Luggan Downs to a Luggan Highway, called or known by the name of the Broad Lane, on part of the said tenement of Trelawney, the lands of George Hunt, and adjoining to the said waste on the west. And here we see the signatures of those who presided in the court at that day: Arthur Fox, Alexander Paul, Andrew Paul, Benjamin Hockin, James Jenkin, Noel Bryant, John Vivian, Richard Hoskin, Horton Duncan, Henry Udy, Richard Paul, and Thomas Carthew. Some might think that manorial records can be quite boring, but in fact they're a fascinating social history document. At the moment, and since January, Cornwall Record Office is embarking on a project to do with manorial documents, and we are open to your queries on that, and please contact us at Crescent Kernow, Cornwall Archives and Kurdish Studies Centre, crescentkernow@cornwall.gov.uk. Thank you.